everybody, and welcome to another episode of Horror Movie Night. This week, we're talking about Thinner, as it's properly pronounced.
Guess what? I just watched it. I'm just going to keep teasing the joke and not doing it.
So I've really lost track. Is this a Scott or Kyle pick? Where does this land?
So I think this is a me pick. I was watching it and I'm like, who the fuck picked this? Yeah, it was me. I'm pretty sure it was me. I think that my thought process was
it Thanksgiving?
I've run out of Cannibal Woopsies, and so I'm just trying to find anything that's even remotely about eating or overindulgence.
Well, so we also threw this out there before we hit record. I'm pretty sure that Thinner kind of got back on our wavelengths a little bit when we did the worst movies from great directors, and Tom Holland, I think, was on the list, and we all unanimously were like, "Oh, it's Thinner."
Yeah,
which wasn't fair because I haven't seen it before, but it stands. It stands.
Yeah,
it completely still stands. It's
really boring. Yeah,
it's a lot of problems. It's offensive.
Yeah.
Yes. It's boring. Mm-hmm. It feels like it's moving, and then you realize that you've been trapped in the third act for like 25 minutes.
This third act will not stop.
No, it's a relentless third act.
But it's like a second act. You know, it's like so long that it's like the second act just doesn't end, but you know it's the third act because all the action is happening.
My internet cut out when he first went to the camp and accosted them and got the ball bearing in his hand, right? And I was like, oh my god, okay, we're almost to the end. Like, this is like the final battle. My internet went out. I went back to put on the movie, and I was like, 42 minutes left. No.
Yeah. And it's a long 42 minutes.
It moves. I feel like it moves up until that point to a certain extent, and then it just, not that there's ever a good point in this movie, but man, did the brakes really kick in. I want to talk about some IMDb facts right out the gate, though, because I think the IMDb facts really capture a lot of what I think is wrong with this movie beyond the obvious ones. Because I feel like this movie doesn't ever fulfill any of the promise of what the premise could be at all.
No.
So originally the crew planned to do much more gruesome FX makeup, which would have had Billy's flesh dangling off of a protruding jaw and cheekbones. But partway into the filming, they all decided that it was too horrific and cut it. Like, what? The movie's called Thinner. That's why we're here. Yeah,
that's exactly why I was there. When I was just getting like bones and sort of like more defined jawlines, I was like, no, this is not.
Yeah,
the dude's not also asking for better features.
No, and that's the problem. It makes it really difficult as well because you're having these doctors be like, I'm giving you permission to quit the diet. And I'm like, this dude looks like he's Scott. He looks like Scott right now. Like he's not like horrifically skinny. He's just like human skinny. I feel like they could have done so much more for him to be like horrifically skeletal. Like towards the end, it should have been basically a puppet of a skeleton with like flesh just like barely clinging on.
Didn't you see that they put like some black makeup under his cheekbones to make him look extra emaciated? Yeah. Come on.
All right. So this is a horrible story. We're going to talk about Tom Holland for a little bit. While in production, co-writer and director Tom Holland was stricken with Bell's palsy, a verse that paralyzed one side of his face. The effects could have been minimalized if he had gotten a steroid shot immediately, but the other producers insisted that he continued to work. It was 36 hours before he was able to see a doctor, and it took him over a year and a half for him to fully recover from the Bell's palsy. And I was thinking that, I was like, I think this movie killed Tom Holland's career because he didn't do another movie for like years after this. But this film was financially successful. I think he just was literally sick for like 2.5 years.
Yeah,
before he could even consider directing again.
Why would you even want to step foot into a toxic environment like that again after realizing that?
100%. Yeah, they didn't give a shit about him.
And he's been in the system for so long. You know, I'm putting words into his mouth, and because I'm jaded and cynical too. But God, that sucks.
And then the last fact about Tom Holland that I have, and we'll dive into this for sure in the episode, listeners, but director Tom Holland was never happy with the ending. The producers changed the original one, which was faithful to the novel, because the test audiences hated it and said that they wanted more gore. They shot more gruesome footage of his wife's ultimate fate, but it was not utilized in the final cut of the film. We'll get into that in a second. And then the last interesting fact here, because it ties into a recent episode we did, Dino De Laurentiis originally sought to produce this movie in 1986 after completing Maximum Overdrive, another Stephen King adaptation. He originally sought Sam Raimi to direct, Scott Spiegel to write it, and Robert Teppert to produce it, but they were all busy working on Evil Dead 2, so he eventually just helped produce Evil Dead 2 instead. I would watch a 1987 Sam Raimi adaptation of this movie, and don't want to spoil my double feature, but I think we eventually got the Sam Raimi version of this like 3 decades later.
Damn it, dude!
Hey, you get to pick a double feature first, so keep that in mind.
I know, but now I need to find something else because I just won't feel right by taking it.
There's a moral. He has a moral compass on this show. Okay.
Something about this movie that I've always remembered is that I actually think that the posters and the trailers in 1996 scared me way more than this movie was ever possible to be scary. Because there's it's like that face with the skull like superimposed over top of it, and like that's a really cool image. And I swear I couldn't find the trailer to watch it in time, but I swear that there's a shot in the trailer where he like lifts up his shirt and it is just like skin clinging to a rib cage, and it's like really gnarly looking, and that would have been cool to be in this movie, but I don't think it is. It's so much possibility to do with this premise, and they kind of just wimped out on all of it. Like we barely even get to see I was like, we should have seen so much more of the Lizard Man. You know what I mean? Like more than just like a quick cameo and a nightmare scene.
Because I was like, man, are we not going to see the Lizard Man? Because this is only the second time I've watched this movie.
This is the last one for me. Same, second and last for me.
Yeah, second and last. I really, I knew that going in that this wasn't a good movie, but I was like, oh, there's some cheese in here right now. No, it's just not a whole lot going on.
But it feels like there should be. The tone of the whole thing, it doesn't feel like 96. It feels a little more like 91. Like it feels like it's
because everybody's wearing dated. Beige.
Yeah. So plenty of shades of beige. Like if they do, if you guys ever follow Color Palette Cinema on Instagram or whatever, where they do like this would just be all beige tones. It'd be pretty brutal.
So I need
a lot of white folk.
I mostly agree with you. I do think that there is one moment of cheese that literally had me laugh out loud. And it is the character of Richie the Hammer, right? This stereotypical Italian mobster. And our main character calls him up to see what he knows about curses. And he says, well, I don't know anything, but I'll ask my ma because my ma tends to know these types of things, which is a weird line. And then he literally just turns around and is like, hey, ma. And then this Italian woman just shows up and they talk Italian to each other for like 2 minutes. And then he gets back on the phone. He gets back on the phone and just gives exposition to our main character. It's the most ridiculous thing to happen in this movie. I laughed so hard, and I don't think that was supposed to be funny. It destroyed me.
It was hysterical.
I mean, I feel like clinging to any semblance of entertainment value while watching Thinner is the right decision.
Because I'll also give the nightmare scene. The nightmare carnival scene with like the dolls of them hanging up was like, I'm like, man, if this movie was more of that scene and less of the rest of this movie, I would be like, you know what? Thinner's not good, but it's a fun watch. Like it's worth like checking out. There's nothing. It's offensive to literally everybody.
Oh
yeah. It's like,
it's
fatphobic. It's anti-Romany. And I just want the listeners to know that we are not going to use the G word because it's a slur. Watching it was painful because they use it.
They threw it around a lot more than I thought. Yeah, I was like, they probably say it once or twice.
And it was truly used as a slur too. It wasn't like a poor descriptor. You know what I mean? Like it was.
They even used the short. They used the shortened version of it, which just seems even worse.
Yeah,
But the other thing that I had to laugh about is the casting in this movie.
Oh my god.
Because it is insane that the woman that he hits is the daughter of the guy with the nose thing.
It's because the guy is 106 years old in the book, by the way.
Okay, see, that makes more sense. They casted a woman who looks older than
him, yeah.
Like,
what they should have done is they should have cast someone who was the same age but with less old people makeup on.
Yeah, like I was just like, she looks like it was his mom that got hit.
Yeah.
Like
I forgot that it was his daughter until
they said it in the courthouse because
I was not paying that much attention in the courthouse scenes because I do not like court movies. They're boring as shit.
Well, they moved through this courthouse pretty quick, at least. It's
yeah,
like
I know, but I
scene.
wasn't paying attention. And once I remembered that it was my pick, I was like, man, I got nobody to blame but myself. But here's the thing about the conceit of the movie is that the main character is Billy Halleck,
sure,
whatever,
something like that.
Is a very obese and very arrogant lawyer. He gets this mobster off of a hit charge, even though it's probably like he did put out a hit for this guy. In any case, he goes out to dinner with his wife and like I guess the guy who's the other partner at his firm, and then in the book, his wife gives him a handy in the car on the way home, and he's about to come, and then he runs over the old woman who is actually the daughter of the chieftain. I don't know if that is an offensive term.
Tom Holland upped the ante on what happens in that
car. He comes even harder.
Yeah, like, well, here's the thing is that Stephen King and hand jobs, name a more iconic duo. I'll wait.
Do you think that Stephen King specifically asked for his cameo to happen in the middle of the Roadhead hand job sequence?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, I'll only do this cameo if.
Do we not have a Stephen King bingo? We should absolutely be doing like a.
There's a Patreon episode as we make.
If there's a hand job, that's really
Patreon content. We will make a Stephen King bingo card for people to download and use anytime they watch a Stephen King movie.
But that means we'd have to rewatch. We'd have to watch another Stephen King movie.
No. Well, we can just make one. Well, listen, I'm sick of it. We don't need this stuff to tie in. Half the time, I have to shift our schedule around all the time anyway. It's better.
Very true. So here's the thing: is that one, I don't think that the amount of head bobbing that the wife is doing in the car is commensurate with the length of Billy's penis.
Nope.
So it felt very comical. I knew it was going to happen, as he's driving and all that. And so I did get some enjoyment out of that. Not sexual, but just some enjoyment out of that. But I do love this thing that Stephen King does where he makes himself a kind of a loser in pretty much every movie that I've seen him in.
Yeah, he never cameos as a winner.
He's not a cool guy, which is really that's kind of a Scott move if there ever was one. I've never been in a movie, and I've also never had a book turned into a movie.
But if you had a choice.
But if this was my trajectory in life, I'd be doing the exact same shit.
Well, listen, when they make the film based on El Satan, you know how they always make cookbooks into movies?
Yeah, they do. And speaking of consuming things, Kyle, I just heard a little spritz.
I had to ask Mom, the bartender, what we had and if she knew about any Romani curses. But what I ended up getting was a Bud Light Next. It's zero carb, super crisp light beer. Because thinner.
Because if you're on a diet, hell yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So shout out to a friend of the show, Evan Fonseca, for leaving these in my fridge.
And I have one as well. I don't have a Bud Light Next. I was trying to find a strawberry sour or something of those along that line. I couldn't. So I was like, oh, if we're talking like Romani booze that plays into what this movie is about, I made strawberry cordial in the summer, and this is the last of it. So,
cheers to the last of it.
Eat your own pie.
I want to, before we get to the ending of this movie, because
Thank
that's
you.
the big
Okay.
thing we have to talk about.
Yeah.
I want to focus on one last thing. I want to talk about.
Is it Carrie Werer's hair?
No,
Because it's
but
huge.
that is
Right.
also a problem. But
why not?
there's look, the way that they depict obesity in this movie is so offensive. As a person who has obese friends, as a person who has podcasting people that we're friends with who are obese, they depict the source of obesity like you have to be Homer Simpson, that you just cannot pass a table with food and not want to eat every single thing that's presented on the table. Like, I'm like, this is insane. Like, he's like walking around like holding whole fucking cakes in his hand, just like eating it with a foot. Like, it's like, this is so grossly offensive how they're depicting this.
It doesn't help that the actor Robert John Burke, the guy that played Billy, he always looks like he's about to open a present. Now,
Yeah.
I thought that was his face because he was in a fat suit. But then when he is in an emaciated fat suit, he's still making this like weird kind of smirk, and his eyes are wide and there's a glint in them. It looks like he's about to open a fucking present, and it does not help when he's got like 2 ham hocks in each hand. You know?
Well, it also doesn't help that he talks like a Christian Bale Batman the entire movie.
Yeah, he's like
he does. He talks like Archer. Is what I heard a lot of Archer, and I have to like
Oh my god! I just realized who it sounded like, but it's such a deep cut. If anyone ever watched Assy McGee, he talks the way that Assy McGee was voiced.
What the fuck is Assy McGee?
It was a very short-lived Adult Swim cartoon that was Dirty Harry, but if Dirty Harry was literally just 2 butt cheeks on with legs, and it was an incredible cartoon. But Kyle,
that's the most Adult Swim elevator pitch I've ever heard.
Kyle, you did a little bit of research for us because I was searching up trivia. You looked up, because we were saying that the makeup doesn't seem that far removed from the Nutty Professor, so we wanted to see if the same team worked on this, but you found out something even more incredible about who did these prosthetics.
Yeah. Now there was a big team, obviously, because there's quite a few things happening in here. But I was looking and I recognized the name Vincent J. Gustini. And I was like, okay, I know that person's done a lot. And so I scrolling back on their IMDb all the way as them in makeup department. So not specifically special makeup effects, but makeup department. The first credit for Homeboy, Spookies. Now it doesn't stop there. Okay. Next up. So a couple of these.
You guys just spoiled all of my double features.
Oh no. Oh, okay. Well,
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Okay. So a couple other ones here: Doom Asylum, Mind Killer, right up to Blades, and then we get immediately after that Toxic Avenger Part 3. But
the worst of the franchise.
Wait, is Toxie 3 the one where the guy gets smushed in the wheelchair?
Nope, that's Toxie 2, and we look. I don't want to spoil an upcoming Patreon / charity live stream event thing, but Toxie 2's celebrating an anniversary next year, so I think it might be time to finally watch it.
But the last one that popped out at me before, and this is, I'll stop at 1990 because it just goes on and on and on. But which metamorphosis do you think he did?
Yours.
He did your metamorphosis.
Wrong! He did the alien factor.
He literally had a 50-50 chance and we got it wrong.
Damn it. All right, I want to talk about the ending in this movie. We can skip so much of the middle of this movie. It's pointless.
I mean, do you want to skip the part where it's basically mini Vietnam?
Yeah.
There's so much gunfire. There's so many explosions.
I had to think about that.
Yeah, no, I do, because it's stupid and adds nothing to the plot. But yeah, Richie the Hammer, yes, just shows up like Rambo blowing up their camp out of nowhere.
Dressed he's got a black beret on. He is Rambo.
It's insane. I want to talk about, well, first of all, we find out that the judge, who was Lizard Man, ultimately decided to kill himself. And boy, was his wife ever callous on the phone call, cracking wise when he calls and she's like, he drove his car off of a bridge and exploded. It's convenient. He always wanted to be cremated. I'm like, your husband just died. Your husband literally just died.
She got the insurance payout. She didn't
She
like
was
him in the
probably my
first
favorite
place.
character, honestly.
Oh yeah.
When Billy goes to visit her, she's pretty hilarious.
She's
Yeah.
great.
Oh, she's just
great.
drunk and just like, you guys all fucked up. You all made mistakes. You deserve this.
Also, right before we get into that ending, I'm sorry. I do have one thing. Is it just me, or is Daniel von Bargen? He's the policeman. He's looked the same for 30 years, right? Like,
I was gonna say, the second he showed up, I'm like, I know that guy, and I feel like he's played a cop for 30 years, or
yeah.
like.
Well, it also doesn't
always
help that
been
he
a
played a
cop.
cop in fucking Super Troopers. So the movie that I've probably watched more than any of his other. Well, definitely, I've watched that movie more than anything else in his filmography. So, but yeah, like he's always looked the exact same, and it's funny. Character actors are funny like that because it's almost a slap in the face to be a character actor when you look like him, because you're never going to be a leading man.
No, but it's like when we talk about those characters like Biff Whiff or whatever, where it's like they are literally just, you scroll through their career and it's just like bum, homeless man, bum. There's just certain people that's just like, hey man, you got to look. I'm sorry. Like this is the role that is going to be yours.
Yours.
So the ending
Forever.
The ending of the book, I want to talk about the ending of the book versus the ending of the movie. For the most part, it follows the same beat. He's given a pie. He says it's a strawberry pie. His blood's been mixed into it. The curse is temporarily halted. Someone has to eat the pie to get the curse. He recommends be a man, eat the pie, die with dignity. And the guy thinks that his wife is cheating on him, decides he's going to make the wife eat the pie, and then everything will be great, but then finds out that his wife and his daughter have eaten the pie. In the book, he literally, filled with grief about his daughter, decides to cut himself a slice of the pie as well, so they all just die.
I thought the end of it was that he ate the rest of the pie.
Yeah,
so that
he ate the rest of
live.
the pie, so he eats the whole pie. The movie version, he goes to get a slice of the pie. And then also in the book version, it's very heavily implied that his wife was in fact not cheating on him, and it was just all him being paranoid.
And it's very heavily implied the opposite.
Yeah. The movie, they're just like straight up like, yeah, she's been cheating on him. Here's the doctor showing up in the morning. And I have two questions that came from me. First of all, how does he plan to explain his wife's corpse in the bed? Like at some point, it's just like, I don't know, her eyes exploded with strawberry jam and she's emaciated overnight. Like, there's going to be questions. Yeah. And then secondly, like, he's so sad that his daughter's dying, but then it takes this dumb ending where it implies that because his wife was in fact cheating, it negates all of that and he's fine with killing. Like, because he says it in a way where it's not just like, oh, I'm going to die still with Dr. Mike. It just sounds like, oh, I'm going to kill Dr. Mike now instead of eating this pie.
I don't think that it's to me, the way I watched the ending, it was that he was going to live and he was going to kill the doctor.
Yeah, and it's like that takes away every
off with murder. So
but it's like this whole thing was a morality. It's supposed to be a morality tale at the end. It's supposed to be like you didn't own stuff and now you've had to suffer great loss, and now you're going to finally, for the first time in your life, make the right decision. And they just negate it. Like I totally understand why Tom Holland hated this ending so much. I wouldn't be shocked if Tom Holland just straight up disowned this movie because, like I said earlier, it's just unfulfilled promise. Like there's so much that could be good in this movie, and it just isn't. It's a real bummer.
91 Donkey Lane is a magical apartment complex that contains immense power but lacks intelligent inhabitants.
What is happening?
I'm getting texts.
Why are we getting a lot of texts?
People found out what we did.
Oh, dividing Mike Myers into an infinite amount of tiny Mike Myers?
Listen to 91 Donkey Lane for free on Spotify or your favorite podcasting app. More at 91donkeylane.com. See you there, you donkeys.
If you're going to have to watch it, you could watch something else to make the night a little bit better. So, Scott, I do have to ask, what would you put on?
It sounds like you and I would both be putting on Drag Me to Hell.
Probably, yeah. That's fine. You have Drag Me to Hell. I have a number 2 that I had written down.
No, the number 2 is thinner.
Oh, yes, that's true.
Because it's number 2.
Kyle, how about you? What would you double feature this with?
It wouldn't be a super fun night by any means, but I want to watch George Romero's Bruiser, as one of
What the
those
hell is
like
Bruiser?
Yeah.
It's probably, aside from some of the Dead trilogy, maybe one of his like worst films.
Really selling us.
Yeah,
2000.
I actually like. It's actually because I'm just interested in watching it again, and it feels like the covers were kind of like similar to me when I had seen them in the video stores.
They actually
like,
look quite similar. You're right.
there is something along the lines of like somebody sort of turning into somebody else, not via curse, but more of like a persona thing. And I don't know. It feels like a little like class, like there's like a little class issue there too. And I don't know. That's what I was thinking about as I kept watching this. Maybe it's just because I wanted to watch something else.
All right, so I think I'm the only one who has a movie that will truly make the night better.
Why?
Drag Me to Hell? I actually really like Drag Me to Hell.
It is really good, but I feel like they're both very difficult movies to watch for different reasons.
Yes, yeah. I like Drag Me to Hell more now than I did the first time I watched it when it came out.
No, I want us to have fun.
Yes,
and I didn't have this written down originally, but when Kyle mentioned that this movie feels more like 1991, and I looked at the photo behind him on the video call, I said, that lighting makes me think of a movie that I love from about 1991 to 1993, and that is, of course, Dr. Giggles. I'm going to pop on Dr. Giggles right after Thinner. It weirdly feels like it works.
It fits. It
gives you, and it fulfills the promise of what its premise is way better than Thinner. So I'm going with Dr. Giggles on this one.
That's a really solid double feature. I think that you win. I know it's not a competition, but you win.
No, but you do win. You win.
All right. Well, guys, we've got another segment coming up. It's the newest segment on our show. Everyone loves it. They love when I say the name. What's going on? And for this segment, we don't really have anything in our personal lives too much to promote, but what we will say is we do have a Patreon, patreon.com/HMN podcast. You can see what image is behind Kyle that I'm referring to. We've got a store that you can come to and buy all types of great swag, be it enamel pins, t-shirts, and bars of soap. And I will be part of 2 live streams. These guys will be part of one of them on November 24th, which is Black Friday. One Hit Thunder will be celebrating 4 years with a live stream at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And on December 8th, from midnight to midnight, is the Geekscape 24-hour holiday live stream, 4th annual. We haven't figured out the exact time that our segment will be on that just yet, but we will be doing maybe like a half hour of some Patreon content for the new year, looking at what movies have anniversaries coming up in 2024, as well as one of my new favorite things. What horror movies came out in 2014 that have now officially crossed the threshold into being eligible for our show? So stay tuned for all of that. And now, to tie up the episode, we got to know, what is everybody watching? Scott, what have you watched that you want to talk about?
Creepshow season 4 on Shudder.
Ooh,
which
what?
I
4?
Yeah. I don't even remember the 3rd season. So
was
I wonder
the 3rd
if I
season
missed
the
it.
animated specials and they just count that as the 3rd season?
No, there's a full 3rd season.
Wow.
I think that I've watched everything. I just don't remember. In any case, I'll have to go back to season 3 and see if I'll start from the beginning and see if I remember it all. But if I have watched it, then it was pretty forgettable. But season 4 is so much fun. I really, really love it. It was just such a blast. Watching it and then watching Thinner was actually the worst possible thing I could do because Thinner really feels like a Tales from the Crypt, like an EC comic, right?
Yeah.
So like a little bit more backstory of the book was that Stephen King wrote it under the pseudonym Richard Bachman, released it in '84. And
I feel like it's one of the weirder Bachman books, though. It feels more like a Stephen King book than a Bachman book. Yeah,
most of the Bachman books really are thriller-y.
They're outside of the horror genre. I think this is the only directly horror one. Yeah.
I mean, I guess Running Man, or The Long Walk. The Long Walk is what they used for the Running Man, right? Or
no, there was a separate one.
Or is it actually the Running Man?
Yeah.
In any case, that feels a little bit more like sci-fi-y, but this is the only one that I remember reading, because I read all the Bachman books when I was in junior high. It was the only one I remember reading feeling like it was like, this is very obviously Stephen King. But it feels so EC Comics, which is obviously such a huge influence on Stephen King. And he did the Creepshow movie, the first one, and man, it's so funny how Creepshow as the movie Creepshow, and then even probably to a certain extent Creepshow 2, they don't work nearly as well, for me at least, as a 6-episode series. So that means you get 12 stories, because each story is about 25 minutes and they're 50-minute episodes on Shudder. It's the exact same concept.
Yeah.
It's like,
I mean,
it's 3 episodes of the show, or it's 1.5 episodes of the show put into a movie. But for some reason, the show works so much better. And I'm not even a TV show guy. I've talked about that ad nauseum.
I think anthology horror always works better in TV format. Like Tales from the Crypt has a lot of clunkers, a lot of them. But when it's strong, like you just like forget about the fact that you sat through like 3 episodes that didn't inspire you, because like the good episode is so good.
Yeah, very true. Yeah.
But yeah, no, you're right.
Huge recommendation. If you liked any of the old stuff from even if you like the Creepshow movies, you will love the Creepshow TV show.
Nice.
And season 4 is very good.
How about you, Kyle? What have you got for us?
So actually I did maybe have something to promote, but I don't know when it comes out, but it ties in with what I watched. Our friends over at Video Monsters, they do these crazy popcorn punch out ranking things that are hours in length and really exhausting. However,
long form.
And I mean that with love, because I have a blast being on them. But they're gonna do a Texas Chainsaw ranking game.
Oh, and you're gonna show up and fuck up the rankings by really fighting for next
generation.
I'm gonna fuck it up. I actually think that I got them on my side a little bit, especially since it didn't get picked for their 1995 Punch Out, or 94, whatever the year we ended up doing. But anyway, I revisited. Again, no time to do anything, but I really tried to at least throw on one that I hadn't watched in a while. So I watched the 2003 remake, the Platinum Dunes remake of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And it's probably been 10 years. Actually, it was on my letterbox. I had watched it at some point in time, and I don't remember how or why. But I'm going to round that to 10 years. And I remember people, including myself, being like, as far as like horror remakes go, it's pretty solid, right? Like I remember kind of like not.
I think I was one of the only people that I've only watched it once. I hated it when I saw it, but I also was coming from it as like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a masterpiece. Why would you ever even attempt to do this? And I think I was getting frustrated of like, why did they show Leatherface's face without the mask? Like, why would they, like, there was like these things that they did that I'm like, this is sacrilege.
Voldemort,
like,
yeah, it's bad.
But I mean, I don't know. Everyone else loves it, so maybe I should rewatch it.
No.
Okay.
No. So
also, don't listen to Kyle if he says you should watch something. You know better.
No,
I trust Kyle.
This is not a recommend. I'm coming at it from more of what Matt's saying now, and I think that people give it the pass, and the people who give it a pass sometimes maybe don't hold Texas Chainsaw into high regard as we might, right? So like, because I think that the movie can be pretty polarizing, the original, where like some people are just like, oh, it's just like a low budget slasher with a guy with a chainsaw. So then if you view it like that, then you might like the Platinum Dunes one because there's like,
but if you watch it as like literally one of the scariest, most well-paced movies ever made, then it's like, what the fuck is this?
Then it's a bummer. And it's the movie's aggressive and icky. Arlie Emery is like,
that is 2003, baby.
Yeah.
And like, there's a couple of cool like moments and shots and like interesting things, but on the whole, the hole in the head is the interesting shot. That's what I was referring to.
Yeah.
And other than that, it's just not it. And I remember like there was a bunch of like backstory and family history and like all these things that I thought were going to be kind of like fun, and it's not.
Platinum Dunes, I feel like a lot of their remakes, they tried to put backstory in places that didn't need backstory,
and everything's
really.
wet, and it's Texas, and it's like,
yeah,
why it's pouring ass rain at the end of the movie is like, no, it's not.
So
it's not.
So speaking of everything being wet and gross, I'm going to talk about a very Yeah, no. I want to talk about a very gross documentary that I watched on Hulu that I do think is a good documentary, but it is a tough watch. And it's the Monster Inside documentary, which is about McKinney Manor.
Oh, McKamey Manor.
McKamey Manor. And this one, now our friend John made a documentary a couple years ago on Netflix called Haunters, the Art of the Scare. That was a lot about this. I would love to know John's perspective on this particular doc, because this particular doc mostly follows 5 people who are still 10 years after the fact having severe trauma and issues and are campaigning to have the building put down and something done with Russ, because he's showing increasingly more and more sociopathic and dangerous things. Now he doesn't hire anybody to do the torturing. It's just him and the person alone.
Oh my
for
God.
10 hours. And they're like, he's getting way too much glee out of what he's doing to these people. And the fact that there's no other witnesses to what's happening is very unnerving. And it's a hard doc to watch, but I think it's an important doc to watch, because while they're doing it, they are also explaining the benefits of stuff like that, like extreme horrors. And they show the one girl towards the end does a different extreme haunt. And I am spoiling a little bit of this, but they talk about how like their entire life has been filled with abuse. Their entire life has been filled with like pain, and they need it. They felt like doing something like that would help them feel in control of a situation again, and that they could push through it. And they show all the footage where she's just being tortured to the point of crying and begging to make it stop when she's with Russ. And then they show a very similar thing that is equally as intense, but afterwards she's put into a safe room, and the actor comes in and like drops the act and talks to her very calmly and says like, you did such a great job. We're here for you. Let me know if you need anything. We have drinks for you. Like it was just like she said, it was night and day having someone sit down with you and like drop the character and treat you like a human being and like walk you through what went on in the room and make sure that you're okay and that you're processing it okay. And Russ, who just wants to stay in that character 24/7 and never wants to not be that.
That's not a character.
Yeah, that just becomes who you are. So I do think it's a very well made doc.
It feels like that's like aftercare, you know?
Yeah. You
almost
need that.
But I also really, the overlap of like sadomasochistic sexual fantasies and some of that extreme haunt stuff.
It's too much for me. I could never. I'm perfectly happy with my random kids in a farm that built some cool animatronics, and I'm like riding on a hay barrel through it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I really think that stuff like McKamey gives haunts an incredibly bad name, because the people that want the extreme haunt are going to act out negatively in a regular haunt, right? And because they are expecting to get a rise out of somebody and then get what they want. And then on the other side, it's going to make people scared of haunts because they're like, oh, somebody's going to abuse me. I'm paying someone to abuse me.
I genuinely think that there is going to be, if they don't shut that place down, I think there will be a point where someone dies.
Oh, there's going to be a murder.
Under Russ's care in quotes. But while Russ might not care about you, Horror Movie Night cares about you, and we care to stick to our schedule. We'll be back every Thursday.
If you watch dinner and you need to talk about it, if you want some drinks or
Facebook, Instagram, we have a safe space where you can talk to us about your feelings after suffering through Thinner, and we'll be here every week. Happy to talk to you here at Horror Movie Night.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network.